There is no doubt how far you can go in life if you only have the ability to stick with one habit every day for the next 3 years. And we all know this in theory. For the majority of my life, I've always identified myself as someone who never follows through. I bought more self-help books than I'd finish. I had more workout gear than the amount of workouts that I actually did that month. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, but for years, I would never end up doing it. Then I found out that my problem has never been about the lack of motivation or the lack of willpower, but it's the ability to shift gears and to see my brain as if it is a software program. And once I truly understood how to use neuroplasticity to go towards my goals rather than going against it, everything changed in my life. So how do you finally manage to get yourself outside of that imposter syndrome and finally get the goal that you've been after for decades? Neuroplasticity is the answer, my friend. And that's what this video is all about. It's learning how to restructure your brain to make those new behaviors just as automatic as the old ones. And this stuff is incredibly life-changing once you understand the mechanism of it and when you fully understand it. So this is a deep dive to understand what your brain does when you're trying to change, why most people fail, and what to do so you don't become one of them. Also, how are we feeling about the bangs? I mean, are we loving it? Are we hate it? Should I never do this again? What's the vibe? Leave it down in the comments down below. Here are all the video chapters, and you can find the video chapters in the description below. And if you are someone who is ready to do the real work, I'm not just talking about watching these videos, but actually transforming. I provide worksheets for every single one of my videos. In these worksheets, you'll find in-depth journaling prompts as well as practical exercises to help you start removing your limiting beliefs and to write out an action plan so you can start living out as your highest self today. You can access these worksheets down in the description below. Now let's dive right into the video. Let's start off with the first chapter, which is how does neuroplasticity play a role in permanent change? The biggest lie that you've been sold as an adult is that once you grow up, once you mature, once your brain fully develops, then that's just who you are. You are stuck as this one version of you. That is absolutely false. We are not meant to stay as one version for the rest of our lives. In fact, as we up level, as we upgrade, as we go for new things in our lives, we are going to need to evolve our personality, because our personality is what creates our personal reality. Your brain is not fixed, and it's not hardwired at all, but it's your assumption about how much you can grow and change that is holding you back. Your brain is like a machine. Your brain cannot distinguish the difference between a positive habit and a destructive one. But the more that you repeat the number of times that you do this habit, the more it gets reinforced. So I have an example for you. Just this past week, I had downloaded Instagram, and normally I have pretty good restrictions around Instagram, but for some reason, this week I had an event and had to contact people just to get things arranged. And I ended up scrolling on Instagram for 3 hours a day for an entire week. And that week was just chaotic for me. My apartment was a mess, my mind was a mess, I was anxious. I also found myself completely overwhelmed with all the things that I had to do, but at the same time, I wasn't doing it. I was procrastinating, and it was especially hard for me to do the hard things that I had set myself out to do. So if you scroll on Instagram for 3 hours before bed, your brain optimizes for that pathway. It's going to strengthen that neural connection to distraction and seeking out that cheap dopamine. But on the other hand, if you choose to read for 3 hours before bed, then the brain optimizes for that too. The brain is optimizing and strengthening that neural connection for deeper understanding of information, being able to sit for long hours and having the ability to focus. So once you have this prior understanding, let's talk about the neuroscience of why change is so hard. The reason why your habits feel so darn easy right now is because your brain sees those habits as neurologically efficient. And it only became efficient because you kept firing and wiring that neural pathway for years, and if not decades. So just imagine that you decided to go sledding on a snowy hill for the first time. So you go up to the top of the hill, you put your sled down and you slide down. That first time is going to be a little bit difficult because you're gonna have to compact the snow. You're gonna have to use your legs to push yourself down the hill. Now, once you put your slide down and you slide down the hill for the first time, then you're gonna go up again and you're gonna go down that same pathway. Only this time around, it's going to be slightly easier because you've already paved the way. You've essentially compacted the snow. So the second time you do it, you're gonna go a little faster. The third time you go, a little faster than the second time. By the 50th time that you go down this slide with your sled, it is going to be so much faster, so much more slippery than the first time that you did it. So this is exactly what happens in the brain. The more that you do something, there is a fatty substance called myelin that essentially wraps around that neural pathway, and it makes that signal go past faster and faster the more times it goes through that neural pathway. So through repetition, the more the signal goes through this pathway, the more myelinated it becomes, which means that it becomes more automatic. It becomes an automatic behavior in your life. So that's why there are certain habits like brushing your teeth or going on social media. It is so easy to do this because those neural pathways have become more myelinated. But if you were trying to create a brand new habit, say that you want to go to the gym 5 times a week when you have never been to the gym before, you don't know what to do, and you simply do not identify yourself as a gym goer, then you are building a brand new neural connection. And it's kind of like going down a slide made of sandpaper. It's going to be very uncomfortable, and there's this sense of fighting against this resistance because there is no myelin. Your brain is seeing it as this pathway is way more efficient. Why are we building an unnecessary brand new pathway when we have this strong pathway that I've built for the past decade? Why can't we go down this way? That's why when you are forming a habit, especially in the first month or two, it's going to be quite difficult. And a lot of people say that it only takes 3 weeks to build a habit. And that's not necessarily always consistent, because if you have easier habits that you want to start, like drinking a glass of water every day, if you are not drinking a glass of water every day, you guys should really be evaluating how much water you're drinking. But say that you don't drink any water at all, you just drink juice. If that is a consistent pattern that you want to implement, then it's going to be relatively easy because you fill up the glass and you drink that glass of water. But on the other hand, say that you are building a B2B startup and you need to make 5 cold calls a day. That you are going to be met with so much more resistance because you are going to be faced with the potential of getting rejected, the potential of making a fool out of yourself. And there is so much more resistance. There seems to be so much more at stake making those cold calls rather than drinking that glass of water. So habits may not necessarily always be built within the 3-week time frame that everyone talks about, but it could take up to 3 months. It could take up to 6 months. Chapter number 3, changing your habits require you to change your identity. A lot of people start their New Year's resolutions thinking that as soon as it hits the next year, January 1st, that something is going to change. This is the year that I'm going to change. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. Because if you are trying to change and overlay those brand new behaviors from the foundation of your old identity, that new behavior is not going to hold. If you want to build a brand new habit, your identity must change as well. Your desire is to go to the gym 5 times a week, but if you continue to identify yourself as someone who is unhealthy, who is unworthy, who will never be skinny, if you identify yourself as such, then your identity is going to breed those same actions and behaviors, leading you to binge, leading you to lounge around, watch Netflix, leading you to fall off of your consistency and goals. So we need to plant a seed, which is your identity. We need to plant that seed so it can blossom in the way that we want it to. I want to share something with you. If I handed you your dream body today, would you have the habits, the mindset, the lifestyle? Would you have that in place to maintain that physique? Another question for you. If I handed you a $1 million business, would you have what it takes to maintain that level of success or grow it even further? And if we do not show up as the version of ourselves as the identity first, we are not going to be able to have the very goals that we want. And in fact, it's going to be very, very hard for us to maintain it, which is why identity is the core of everything. Who do you need to become in order to have this desire? This is where the formation of neuroplasticity begins, because you're entering that frequency, you're entering that dimension where you are already this person. And the more that you can remind yourself to get back into that state, the more you're going to be able to solidify that neural pathway. So doing the action through grit, willpower, motivation, that's only gonna get you so far. But if you can also engage the identity piece, engaging through visualization, through feeling, of connecting those neural pathways and myelinating it by visualizing, you're gonna have less resistance around that habit, that hard thing, because you've already identified yourself as someone who does that hard thing. And also, have you ever met this one person who seems to succeed in every single thing that they do? Because let's look at Bridget Mendler. She used to be an actress, and then a singer, and then she got into Harvard Law, and now she's building a space startup. How does a Disney child actress jump to becoming a founder of a space startup? Like, that simply does not make sense. There's no correlation. But it is Bridget Mendler's ability to get into character with the goals that she wants, because they understand that every single pivot that they make in their life requires a different character change. Neuroplasticity is writing your own movie and casting yourself as the main character. You need to think of yourself as both the scriptwriter and also the actress of your life, because what happens if you want to write a brand new story in your life? Well, your character has to change too. Anytime I see Daniel Radcliffe in any sort of movie, like he's had a couple of recent ones, I just see Harry Potter. Like I go like, oh my God, it's Harry Potter. That's all I think about. That's all I see. But if you were to look at someone like Zendaya in Euphoria is very different from the Zendaya in Shake It Up. Zendaya in Dune is very different from the Zendaya in Challengers. Zendaya in Spider-Man is very different from the Zendaya in Odyssey. That Zendaya's character, no matter what movie she's in, she is so incredibly versatile. She is so adaptable in her character. She's able to make a switch just like that. And she was filming, I think, Euphoria at around the same time as another movie. It's like, how can you make a switch like that? That's freaking crazy. So Zendaya is a master in her craft because she is able to be versatile in any sort of movie that she's in. That's why those movies, those TV shows are so incredibly successful. The more versatile you are in being able to be fully in character, the more likely your movie will succeed. Stop making change harder than it needs to be by keeping your old identity when you want to change and write a brand new story, because those two realities simply cannot coexist together. And there's almost this grief. Sometimes we hold on to our past identity because it's comfortable, because it's easy, because it's predictable. And when we go for something that's brand new, that's completely different, there's this fear that letting go of this past selves, we're gonna get ridiculed because we've been this version for our whole lives, right? People are gonna say, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are thinking you're gonna be fit when you've been fat your whole life? Who do you think you are thinking that you could be rich when you've been broke your whole life? And there's this almost this attachment because we're worried about what people are gonna say, what people are gonna think, but why can't you, right? And what right do they have to tell you who you are? You get to write your script. You get to be who you want to be. You're meant to evolve every single day. Just because they don't want to change doesn't mean that you're not allowed to, right? You are allowed to change. I'm changing every day. You are not meant to stay as one version of yourself. You are meant to be a caterpillar, and then you go into a cocoon, and then you fly as a butterfly, and then you die. You go into a caterpillar, a cocoon, and then you fly, and then you die, right? Like this constant evolution where every brand new chapter, every brand new movie that you make is going to require a different version of yourself. Just because you are a butterfly now and you've been able to reach this level of success, this butterfly that you've emerged to become may not necessarily get you to the next level, which involves this level of death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. And it's a really beautiful cycle. It's a really, really beautiful cycle, and it's part of nature for us to be a brand new person. And as kids, we were amazing at acting. We loved playing pretend. When you were doing your makeup, you would say, hey guys, welcome back to my channel, as if you were pretending to be a YouTuber, or you probably stole your mom's pearls and decided to wear them because you just wanted to pretend to be an adult, or you would strut down the hall wearing clothes that didn't match with your friends, and you guys would pretend to be models at New York Fashion Week. We've had so many instances where we would play pretend because we wanted to embody a different character, embody a different version of ourselves, and it's super fun. You never had to ask for permission to be a Victoria's Secret model or to be a YouTuber or to be an adult. You simply got into the zone, got into the frequency, you opened your eyes and you're like, all right, here we go. This is who I am. And There's this level of you demand this frequency rather than waiting for this identity to come find you. And this is the approach that I personally use to change my own life, because this has been the exact shift that has changed my life completely. When you step into this version of yourself, visualize yourself by thinking, what are they like when they talk to other people? What are they like when they show up to their desk? What are they like when they walk, right? And show up as that person. Play pretend. Be like a kid. Use that childlike energy. Use that childlike fun. Play your favorite music that gets you into the vibe. That's how you act as if. I don't like using the word act as if. It sounds so serious to me. It has never resonated with me. But what I like to say is just play pretend. Be a kid. Play pretend. Have fun with it. Life is supposed to be fun. Life is supposed to be joyous, even though the very desires that you want seem hard. It's like making it more serious than it needs to be is only going to make it harder. And just fun maxing is going to amplify your ability to show up to these habits more often. If something isn't fun, you're not going to show up every day to do it. So write your story, lean into your character, and know that you get to evolve whoever you want to be. You get to choose. No one gets to choose for you. This brings me to the next chapter, which is the role of discomfort and repetition. If you want to rewire your brain to do more difficult and hard things, you will need to be the initiator of doing hard things. Now, let me explain. This is because your brain requires evidence that if you have evidence that you can do hard things, that evidence is only going to build up and strengthen that muscle for you to do hard things over time. When you are comfortable, your brain isn't releasing the chemicals necessary for plasticity, which means that if you stay within your comfort zone, you are going to stay stagnant. Your brain isn't going to be firing and wiring those brand new neural pathways because simply you are not priming your brain to release the chemicals for plasticity. Think of the role of stress and discomfort like going to the gym to build stronger, bigger muscles. So say that you want to build stronger, bigger glutes or stronger, bigger arms, then when you go to the gym, you are going to need to progressively overload, which means that you're going to have to use heavier weights that are possible but are just as challenging. And that is going to essentially create those micro tears in your muscles. And those micro tears will then form and heal so that it grows bigger and stronger over time. The act of doing hard things works the same exact way because you're building that brain muscle to do the things that you are in resistance to. Who is ultimately going to succeed long term? Is it the person that prioritizes intensity, or is it the person that prioritizes consistency? And the truth is, consistency always wins. It's the whole story of the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise won despite going longer, despite going slower. When you are showing up to your goals, you do not have to show up 200% all the time because that's just going to burn yourself out, especially if you are still in the process of building a brand new habit. You're not going to have the neural pathways to go 200% every single day at the gym because you are only going to fall off because you're going to be so burnt out from that habit. But building a strong long-term habit all comes with managing expectations. Do not go into habits thinking that you need to be perfect. I think a lot of people fall short here because they think that if they have gone consistent for 2 weeks and they miss a single day, what do? They fall off. They stop doing it because they lost their streak. They think that if they lost their streak that they can't go back into that and all progress is lost. It's not. So first of all, don't expect yourself to go every single day, and the moment that you miss that one day, you're toast. Which is where I want to introduce to you the 2-day rule. The rule is that you cannot skip a habit for more than 1 day. If you skip it once, that's fine. But if you skip it 2 days in a row, you have to do it on the second day. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to commit to your goals every single day. It just means that you cannot let yourself fall into a long break. We need to start being more forgiving with ourselves when things don't go as planned. We are ultimately humans and we are not perfect. we are not robots, if we can finally accept that we are not perfect, we can finally start being more consistent. In this next chapter, I also want to talk about the environment and how your environment shapes your brain. What if you have been setting yourself up for failure because your environment is simply bringing in more resistance to the version of you that you want to become? Because your environment plays a massive role in how and what kind of neurons get fired and wired in the brain. Let's talk about people. And you probably see this in relationships where you meet this guy for the first time, you start dating them, you spend more time with them, and suddenly you absorb all of their quirks, behaviors, mindsets, literally everything. That is exactly what happens with our environment around the people that we surround ourselves with. There's this common saying that goes, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. You truly become who you are close to. If you're in an environment and you're surrounded by friends and people that don't have a bigger goal or vision for themselves, they just spend every weekend going to bars and clubs, getting girls, getting guys, they just have nothing going for themselves. If you have this desire for a bigger life, then you are going to feel incredibly resistant to that potential because your brain is seeking out evidence of what's directly around you, which is people who are short-sighted, people that don't have goals for themselves, people who are broke, people who are not motivated or ambitious. Because your brain sees that as evidence, it is seeing that as the truth of reality. But if you want to go in this direction, where you want to see potential, where you can be rich despite your broke past, or the potential of being fit when you've had this old identity of being someone who's unfit, unhealthy. So you need to find and be in an environment where you are surrounded by evidence where that has been possible for other people. Which is why I always recommend that if you are in a town and you can't afford to leave your situation, to read a lot of books from mindsets and people that have been successful, or also watching podcasts, YouTubers that you really admire and that you really want to take in and absorb their mindset, their energy, their lifestyle, their habits, and learning and using the internet to learn who this version is and to find that potential reality for yourself. That is a stepping stone, but ultimately I do recommend that you completely leave your environment. If you grew up in a small town, but you have bigger goals for yourself, a small town may not necessarily get you there, unless the small town is filled with millionaires and billionaires. But if you are young, I recommend that you leave your hometown, go to a brand new city and start fresh, even though that may be a bit expensive, even though it may be really scary, but the amount of growth that you will go through by being in a brand new city, being in a brand new environment, is that you get to create a brand new identity because no one knows you. You have this brand new slate. No one knows who the heck you are, so you can be whoever you want to be. The next thing is adding more cues into your environment. If your goal is to read more, then I recommend that you put your Kindle or your book right next to your bedside. I was listening to a podcast with Dan Martell, and he has 3 different Kindles. He has one Kindle next to his bedside, he has a Kindle in his work bag, he has a Kindle in his reading chair. There are so many different places where he makes the habit of reading as easy as possible for him. For the goals that you want to implement in your life, it is really important that you make it as easy as possible for yourself. But if you have goals that you want to do less of, for example, a really common one is going on Instagram or going on TikTok, you need to make it way harder than it needs to be. The next chapter is neuroplasticity takes form when you sleep. If your life is absolute chaos and you're not getting more than 8 hours of sleep every single day, girl, what are you doing? It's easy to think that those neural pathways, this brand new identity that you're forming in your brain only takes form when you're doing the actual behavior in the moment. But those neural pathways form during rest as well. It's just like when you're going to the gym and you're actively working out and you're creating these micro tears also need to rest in order for it to strengthen. And it's the same exact way with neuroplasticity. When you're learning something new or practicing a brand new behavior, your brain is only going to make those changes temporarily. But how you solidify that change is through restful sleep. If you're not getting enough rest in your life, that's why doing hard things feels continuously hard, because you don't even have the energy and the capacity to do hard things because you're not fully fueled. You are literally fighting with one hand tied behind your back. You can put in all this effort throughout the day, but if you are not sleeping enough, you're not going to be able to create that lasting neural structure in your brain. Now, if we've reached the end of this video, if you want to implement everything that I've taught in this video, then check out my worksheets down below. And if you are on the journey of becoming the woman of your dreams, dreams and building a life that you love, check out my channel because I make a ton of videos about self-worth, relationships, love, money, literally all things high value women energy. If you love this video, I highly recommend that you check out this video over here. This video is how to get ahead of 99% of people in the next 6 to 12 months. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!